Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the November 18th, 2024 Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. We have all commissioners present with the exception of Commissioner Ty Menser, who is available virtually. Today, our first order of business is the 2025 Salary Commission recommendations. I will hand it over to the county manager to
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Commissioners, good morning. Happy Monday. We have Maria Ponte, our HR director here. I want to start with just a thank you to Maria and Kim for their hard work with the Salary Commission. Earlier this year, the commission asked for some changes to be made, and Maria was very responsive to that in supporting the Salary Commission. And I think they we'll continue to make some changes to the process to have a better result each year. With that, I'll hand over to Maria to give a quick overview, and then we can open it up to board discussion. Maria.
Good morning, everyone. Maria Ponte, HR Director. So I'll just start with a little bit of a recap. The Salary Commission had its first meeting on July 15th. We met on 4 occasions. During that first meeting, I gave them an orientation on their roles and responsibilities, as well as what they could expect to receive from the county, which was the meeting setup, data and information that they requested. We subsequently met 3 more times, and during those meetings, they heard from elected officials regarding their operations. They also held a public meeting on October 21st. So some of the data that I provided them has to do with other counties where their elected officials' salaries are set, cost of living in this region as well as the other regions. And on October 21st, they had a public hearing, after which they took the following action. They set the commissioner's salary at $12,328 a month. Current salary is $11,630 a month. As you know, they set your salaries, so these increases will take effect starting January 1st. Now, for the remainder of the elected officials, which include assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, prosecuting attorney, sheriff, and treasurer, they made the following recommendations. So the auditor to set that salary at $12,677 a month. For the assessor, $12,502 a month. The clerk, $12,238 a month. The coroner, $12,238. The prosecuting attorney to align with the state superior court judges, and the sheriff, $15,733 a month, and the treasurer, $12,444 a month. So my ask of you is, in order to make any changes to these elected officials, we will need to take action at one of your December meetings. Right now we have a placeholder on December 3rd. And so I just need direction on whether you will accept the Salary Commission's recommendations or if you have different recommendations. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
open up for discussion. Commissioner Mejia.
I don't have a question, but a recommendation. In the past, general government.
Excuse me, you guys are muted if you are actually talking.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. Commissioner Mejia was providing comment.
Have you heard any of what's been discussed at all?
No, the whole thing's been muted.
Shoot.
You guys were not. I was waiting for the meeting to open.
Maria just gave a kind of a brief overview of the recommendations that the Salary Commission made. Would you like her to?
Yeah, I think we should, for the public, start from scratch.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think it was muted for everybody. Okay, do over.
All right, you want to just
start
with the meeting? Commissioner Fournier?
Do you want to open it again?
Oh, yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the November 18th, 2024 Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. All commissioners are present with Commissioner Ty Menser on Zoom. The first subject for our meeting today is the 2025 Salary Commission recommendations. County Manager.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much. This is Salary Commission Recommendations Take 2. I want to start by thanking Maria and Kim, her executive assistant, for the work that they did in implementing the commissioners' perspectives on making some changes to the Salary Commission meeting approach, and for Kim's direct involvement in working with the commission, providing direction, and facilitating those meetings. And we look forward to future years for them to continue to make additional changes. And with that, I'll turn over to Maria Ponte, our Human Resource Director.
Good morning, Commissioners. Maria Ponte. This morning, I'm going to provide you a brief recap of the Salary Commission process for 2024 to set 2025 salaries. We met four times. July 15th, August 19th, September 16th, and October 21st. During the first meeting, I provided an orientation to the Salary Commission members on their roles and responsibilities, as well as what they can expect to receive in terms of support from the Human Resources Department, which includes meeting setups, as well as providing them with data on comparable counties, cost of living, and other information that they had requested. They also had the opportunity to hear from several of our elected officials. On October 21st, we held a public hearing during which they entertained comment from several members of the public. Following that meeting, they took the following action. They have set your salaries at $12,328 a month. That's $147,936 a year. And as you are aware, they do set your salary, so you can't make any deviation from these numbers. In terms of our remaining elected officials, which includes the assessor, the auditor, the clerk, the coroner, the prosecuting attorney, the sheriff, and the treasurer, they make the following recommendations. For the auditor, $12,677 a month. For the assessor, $12,502 a month. For the clerk, $12,238 a month. For the coroner, $12,238 a month. The prosecuting attorney is to align with the state superior court judges' salaries, those are set by the State Salary Commission. For the sheriff, $15,733 a month, and the treasurer at $12,444 a month. And with these elected officials, you have the discretion to deviate from the recommendations. And my ask of you today is for any salary changes for these elected officials, that you provide me guidance that I can bring before the board in December for any increases in 2025. With that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Mejia.
Okay, so what I was going to say is just based on previous, my recommendation is going to be that the assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, and treasurer be aligned to the commissioner's salary.
You say assessor, coroner, clerk.
Assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, treasurer.
If that's a motion, I second it.
We have a motion and a second to recommend to HR to align assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, and treasurer with the salary recommendation of the commissioners. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now I will open it up for discussion on the motion. We're not teed up to make decisions like that right now, yeah.
Just listed as
This is,
It's to give me direction,
Yeah,
so when
yeah.
I come forward and place it on the AIS, I will indicate that.
Because it has to be approved in
Right,
a
right.
forum. Okay, well then I'll change it from a motion to just direction then.
Okay, so let's have discussion on that direction.
Thank you.
Looking for hands. Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I don't disagree with Commissioner Mejia. I think they ought to be standardized, because I think one is just as important as the other in the scheme of things on how we do business. But I want to be consistent in my objection to the whole process moving forward, I guess. I've been elected 7 times in this county, stood for election each time where I had to file a filing fee to run for the office that I sought. And I knew what the office was, the pay for that office at the time I ran for it. And I've always felt that that pay should not be adjusted other than maybe a cost of living that is bumped to everybody. It shouldn't be adjusted until while you are an incumbent in that particular office. So it's just a bugaboo of mine. I don't have a lot of science behind it, but I think elected officials know what they're signing up for when they run, and I just want to be consistent. And second best thing, I'm probably going to go with Commissioner Mejia on this issue, I suppose. Because I don't think I haven't been successful in the past, and I don't know as I will be successful today, but I want to stay consistent.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
I have a question for Maria. Do you know the percentage increase for each of these salaries? Do you have that anywhere?
I do. So starting with the auditor, the difference in salary between 2024 and the proposed is a 9% increase.
This is proposed, not
Correct.
directed. Okay.
This, yes, the increase to 12,067 is 9% over the 2024 monthly salary. The assessor is a 7.5% increase. The clerk is a 6% increase, coroner 6% increase. I'll skip over to the sheriff, 9.5% increase. The treasurer is a 7% increase, and the prosecuting attorney, because it aligns with the state Superior Court judge, is 3.6% increase.
Okay, thank you.
And the proposed direction would be just aligning it with the commissioner's salary recommendation, which we wouldn't have the exact percentages on those.
The difference between the commissioner's salary, 2024 to 2025 is 6%.
So I guess for my comments, I would say, similar to last year, I oppose any sort of increase that's above the COLA that our county employees receive. That would just be my preference. Of course, we can't do that for our own salaries, but that would be my recommendation for the rest. And then I also had a question for my seatmates, because earlier this year we had, I can't remember who drafted, I think it might have been Commissioner Menser. I might be wrong, but somebody drafted a letter for the Salary Commission from the Board of County Commissioners, and there were 2 copies. One was a recommendation for no increases, and one was a recommendation for, I believe, 3%, which maybe matched the COLA.
Yeah, if I could interject, Commissioner, those letters were presented by staff
Okay.
as options, but there was no direction given, so those letters didn't go anywhere. They weren't presented by Commissioner Mason.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I know those letters didn't go anywhere, but I recall the conversation that the board had was we didn't want to submit those letters to the Salary Commission. We didn't want to interfere with their process, and so I'm kind of wondering why we would want to make changes on their process now if we chose not to send them a letter out of respect for the process that they went through all year. So that's kind of just a question for my seatmates to see if anyone had a change of heart.
Commissioner Menzer?
I can speak to Commissioner Klaus's question. I kind of look to the Salary Commission for kind of like the overall level of increase that it feels is appropriate. You know, the fine gradations that they've made here with treasurer 7%, assessor 7.5, auditor 9. I frankly just don't think they have the information about the jobs to make that kind of fine tuning. There's a statutory schedule that kind of sets us all the same, and Commissioner Edwards and I think Mejia as well kind of, and I made comments about this last year, so I'm just pretty much repeating what I said last year, but I wasn't, you know, I am interested in their looking at kind of the overall schedule and is it calibrated to all the different factors that we try to manage, but for them to get into the weeds and say, you know, the treasurers should get a 7%, but the assessor should get a 7.5%, you know, based on, for me, it would have to be based on the amount of work and the amount of responsibility. And I just don't feel like the Salary Commission in a couple of meetings can make those kinds of super detailed. And those are super detailed. I mean, those are decisions I would have trouble, you know, working in this job every single day for 6 years. I still would have to do hours of research, honestly, to be able to sit there and say that I think the assessor deserves 5% less of a pay increase than the treasurer or whatever that is. So anyway, that's kind of how I can have the position that I didn't want to pre-cook their thinking into where the overall salary schedule ought to be. But at this point, looking at the specific recommendations, I also feel comfortable and not inconsistent to say that I think that things should track the commissioner's increase, and that's also partly because we're headed into some difficult budget issues as well, you know, and I do think about what you say, Commissioner Klaus, about employee COLAs, but we're on a different schedule, different timing. Like I say, we've had employee COLAs every year. We haven't had elected officials every year, so it does matter, but they have to be, I think they have to be thought of pretty separately. So anyway, that's kind of some of my thinking about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I'm not going to win my argument, I don't think. I haven't won it in 8 years, so I don't know that I'm going to win it now. But I do think that Commissioner Klaus has a good point that we're always the final say on the bargaining unit discussions. And because of that, and what Commissioner Menzer said, that we're going into some tough budget times, I would advocate that we, as county commissioners, and that's the reason I'm advocating that is under this current system that is in place, we have no say about what we get, I guess, is that what it is? The salary that we get, we have no say about. And I would advocate that we not receive any more than what our unions are receiving, or at least maybe if they're different, an average of what the unions are receiving. Although there is the complication of some of those have multi-year contracts. So what is the real amount? Anyway, so I just think that the clerk salary sounds like it's the same as the county commission salaries. And we could take an action on the clerk salary, but we can't take an action on our own. And I want to have as balanced of approach as I can to our bargaining units, because we expect a lot out of those folks and times are tough. The inflation rate over the last 3.5 years is over 20%. And it's darn hard for working folks to make all ends meet based on what they've been getting, because it's not a 20% increase during that period of time. I don't know exactly what it is today, but it's probably more like 10. So I guess I'm in favor of leaving everything at the clerk's pay scale, or at least the percentage of increase the same as the clerk's.
And I think that's what the direction is that's being given,
Did the direction include all of them except the prosecuting attorney?
and the sheriff.
Okay.
I wouldn't even do anything different for the sheriff myself. I think it's a fairness issue. I like the sheriff. Law enforcement is my, if I'm gonna be supporting a background. If I was gonna pick one of the groups, I held that position for 20 years. I'm sympathetic to it. But out of fairness to the bargaining units, and the fact that we can't adjust our own any more than what the salary commission puts on it, we just are obligated to accept that, then I want to have the same boost for everybody, for whatever it is that we get. Everybody except the prosecutor and the judges, because we don't have any say on those positions.
Commissioner Menzer.
Well, I just want to clarify, Commissioner Edwards. So it sounds like his recommendation is the same as Commissioner Mejia's, except that he would also set the sheriff at a 6% increase so that it would align with the others. Is that accurate, Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, I think that's right, sir.
So
Okay.
the recommendation is just a 6% increase across the board with the exception of the prosecuting attorney, the recommendation is not to match the commissioner's proposed salary from the salary commission.
So the
You asking me?
6% would match.
Yeah, that's, I just wanted to, is that,
Except for the sheriff.
Except for the sheriff and the prosecuting
They'll
attorney.
match.
And then
because I wasn't
Commissioner
sure if
Edwards-
like initially it was being said that the recommendation was just to match the commissioner's salary for the assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, treasurer,
It is. It's to have
to
it all
match,
aligned.
match the raise, not
Yes.
match the pay.
Match the raise.
Okay.
Well, and it's all aligned regardless. It's always been aligned.
So if you match, I'm gonna say this so that, Rhea, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If they match the percentage, then the salaries will be in alignment with everyone except for the sheriff and prosecuting attorney.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you want to match the percentage,
I see, because there was a 9%, there was a 7.5, there was a 9, okay.
you want to match percentage for everyone, then that'll bring everyone in alignment. But then the question is, do you want to match the percentage for the sheriff or keep it at 9.5%?
And Commissioner Edwards is recommending that we.
So do
also
we
include
want to
that.
open it up for discussion on the sheriff's pay?
I'm
is there
okay
any-
either way. I'm okay with that.
I mean, I'm just trying to be as fair as I can as we move forward, is why I'm, and work within the guidelines that have been set. And by doing that percentage, I mean, the sheriff's gonna get a substantial raise, even at that percent. But I wanna keep the percentage of increase as close as I possibly can to what the salary commission, I'm gonna say, is mandating that the commissioners get.
Commissioner Menzer?
Commissioner Edwards makes sense to me, although I guess I would ask Maria. This one, because if we were to take those recommendations and like unalign all the different, like that would be unprecedented departure in Thurston County history. But the sheriff has always been not aligned, right? So at some point in the past, and I'm not sure exactly when, the sheriff has gotten a higher salary. So I'm willing to hear, and maybe Maria can illuminate what the thinking was, if there was articulated thinking from the salary commission about the sheriff getting 9.5 versus auditor getting 9, et cetera. Was there rationale for that? Because I'm certainly open to hear that.
Maria, if I could, and one of the things Maria provided me was weekly updates, and I think what translated, and I'll hand over for Maria to speak to it in just a second, is some of the electeds made very detailed presentations. And if, as a salary commissioner, you're not aware of what's happening and how these jobs are built, to Commissioner Mentzer's comment, they're gonna hear a lot of information or maybe a little information. And going off of that, they're gonna make an assumption of, oh, well, when they hear a lot of information from an elected official, that must mean their position is pretty intensive and labor intensive, and there's a lot of details. Whereas maybe others did not provide as much information. Some of the commissioners provided more high-level information and not a lot of the detailed information about everything you're involved in. And so I think my assessment after hearing about 3 or 4 updates from Maria, and I'd really like to hear from Maria as well, is that those are the items, that information, the extensiveness of what they presented that created this impression that maybe some are doing a lot more than others and therefore need a bigger raise per se. Maria?
Correct. They had conversations around the scope and breadth of the elected officials' operations. We had several elected officials that came in, gave presentations, PowerPoints describing all of their different divisions. The other thing that they spoke in depth about and considered was this concept that some of the, well, I think all of the chief deputies, where there is a chief deputy, earn more than the elected officials, so they gave that weight. In the sheriff's office, the undersheriff makes significantly more than the sheriff, but that's attributed to how salaries are set, and it's, you know, when the sheriff's deputies get COLAs, you know, that goes up the chain, so then you get your sergeants, lieutenants, captains, your chief deputies, and then the undersheriff. So we're talking probably 30%, you know, more. So those were, like, I would say, the 2 major issues that they grappled with, and we're not the only ones grappling with these issues. It's not unusual or unheard of that a chief deputy will make more than an elected official. We had a presentation from the executive director of the state commission on salaries for state elected officials, and she said the same thing. There are a number of individuals that make more than, let's say, the governor. So we're not the anomaly there, but people still struggle with that, the perception of the chief deputy making more than the elected official.
Did that, so, I mean, did the specific number picked by the salary commission, does that somehow solve or a problem with the undersheriff versus the sheriff, or was it just kind of a recognition of the percentage gap versus the percentage gap they might have seen in the auditor's office between the chief deputy? I mean, where'd they land on giving that higher amount?
A lot of, in observing their conversations, a lot of it is somewhat about feelings and maybe some perceptions that some elected official roles have higher levels of responsibility. So it's really hard for me to pinpoint that for you, but that's a lot of what I heard. I feel that this person is doing so much more, their operations or, you know, have this significant of an impact.
But Maria, these percentage increases, they don't fix the parity
inversion,
issues. Okay.
no.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards?
As far as who works the hardest and gets the least, I almost think it's the coroner. And I see he's not getting any increases either. So he doesn't even have a chief deputy. He's on call out all the time. I know he's short. So
It's in the laws.
that's just, if I was gonna use that analogy, you know, who works the most, who puts the most hours in, I don't know. Most any elected job is what you wanna make of it. I mean, you can whittle your schedule down to nothing, or you can work 24 hours a day, really. I mean, and I think we've got dedicated people in here, but I just don't think that we ought to be more than what our unions are getting. We can't really tell exactly what they're getting because of multi-year contracts. We're going into some tough financial times. So if we set everything at the 6% that the salary commission has mandated for us, I think that's as fair as we could possibly be. That's the end of it.
I'll agree with Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement, but as we start discussing the financial impacts, I think that this conversation needs to be brought back on how we're going to be moving forward, specifically with salary. So I'm also providing direction, I guess, to the county manager. If this can be brought early next year to discuss before the salary commission starts their work on how we're going to be moving forward, just based on budgetary impacts as well.
It's a great perspective, and we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, so current direction being given to staff is to prepare a motion for the December 3rd meeting, if possible, December 3rd, for a motion to recommend 6% raises for assessor, auditor, clerk, coroner, treasurer, and sheriff, and the required 3.6% for prosecuting attorney.
Vice Chair, we just have one technical point that I'll ask Robin.
So the resolution to set the salaries for the electeds comes with the budget, so that will be on December 17th.
So it won't be part
It's-
of agenda
it's the
setting?
17th. You could bring it, but they're gonna take all those actions.
Official action is on the
yeah.
17th.
The
Okay.
resolution with all the rest of the budget resolutions as they normally do.
And if I could just, I'm gonna step aside and ask the clerk. Clerk, is that something we bring a separate agenda item, or we just roll it into the budget?
No, it's,
It will be a motion listed on the agenda with all of the other motions for the budget, so it will be
Yeah.
reviewed in the agenda setting, as any other areas would be inspired.
right.
Just
So
wanna make-
we've shared with the board the list of resolutions, and it is one of them.
Since we're only doing discussion and direction, want to make sure they have an opportunity, if there's needed to be more deliberation on it, that they had a chance to do that.
I just had one question. The initial direction didn't include the sheriff. I just wanted to, I do agree with Commissioner Edwards, across the board, the same for everybody, to me is better than, what I think both of us would be in favor of, which is no salaries, if we could do that, but I know that won't go through. I just wanted to ask Commissioner Mejia if there was any basis for the sheriff not being included in your original direction.
No, it's usually, the sheriff has always been separate historically from what we've been, the rest of the parties, but I agree with Commissioner Edwards and his recommendation. I don't have any.
I guess I could point out for the historical record, the sheriff's salary was the same all the way through until 2007, I think it was. That's where it changed. And I don't know if it was a party affiliation thing or what, but it got boosted that year. It was the same year I retired in December of 2006.
Right after you
So-
left.
So maybe I had alienated somebody along the line. If so,
Sorry, Commissioner Edwards.
I got along with everybody. So just kind of a point of interest.
All right. Any further comments? Next subject, Annual Heritage Grant Awards.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
I'll get the resolutions.
Okay, for this presentation, I believe we have we grab the seat back.
Morning.
As they get settled in, I just wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Ashley on her appointment as CPED director. Now that you're embarrassed, Ashley, please take it away.
Appreciate that. Well, good morning. We've got 3 back-to-back CPED items, but we're going to kick it off with a presentation by Andy for the Annual Heritage Grant Awards. So I will turn it over to him once he gets that live. There was an e-brief sent out about this on November 8th. And we are happy to run through the projects. It's a pretty exciting list of projects that came in this year.
Stealing my e-brief thunder.
I know,
All right.
sorry.
I didn't send it, so that's all good. Okay, good morning. Andrew DeFobis, Interim Community Planning Manager. So today we are here to talk about the 2025 applications for the Heritage Grant Program. Not sure this is gonna advance. There it goes. Okay. So the purpose of this fund is to provide money to assist in projects that promote Thurston County heritage and history. There's state laws on the books that require the county to collect $1 from recording fees from the auditor's office, and those monies are put into a historic preservation fund. And the availability of that fund and the amount of money coming into that fund fluctuates with broader economic trends. So a little bit of history. Since 2010, since the inception, Thurston County has awarded about 108 projects totaling over $500,000 in funds. And this represents a partnership with 42 nonprofit applicants. Last year, the board awarded 6 projects and it was about $44,000 in funds total. So this is an annual grant program. The application period opens in August and applicants have to be nonprofit organizations. The projects get reviewed by a subcommittee within the Historic Commission, and then the broader Historic Commission reviews their rankings and provides recommendations for the Board of County Commissioners, who then selects which projects to fund. These are the criteria that the ranking committee are looking at. They're checking to see if the project aligns with the county's goals in historic preservation. Does it increase the public's experience with or exposure to local history? Do the projects have public and economic benefits? Can they complete their project using best practice standards that have been identified by the Secretary of State? And does the project, is it realistic and does it have measurable outcomes? And is there an immediate need? How time sensitive are the projects? So as I mentioned, there are, well, maybe I didn't mention, I believe there are 7 projects before you today. Here's a map showing where they're located in the county. A lot of them are in the Olympia and Tumwater area.
Well done with the map. It's great to see them.
Yeah.
Where they situate throughout the county, so good job.
And so briefly, there's a couple slides here that go into what these projects actually are. So and they're appearing in the order in which they were ranked by the
Can you explain
historic.
what local register versus non-local register means on that map?
Yeah, I think that,
Historic registry or something like that?
so some of the projects are not things that are going to be on a register. Like I think there's some historic interpretation grant, so it's not a physical structure. And I believe some of these may be on maybe a state or historic or state or federal, but not necessarily local. That's certainly something we could bring a little more context with at the next, when we come back for formal approval.
Yeah, I think the biggest distinction is just ones that are more about historical record keeping versus a building that you can go
Okay.
and visit.
So we've got, the first project was the Tickner Schoolhouse. City of Tenino is the sponsor, and this was replacing the roof on the historic schoolhouse. Most of these, you're gonna see the project costs as $10,000, or that's what they're asking for from the fund. I believe that's the cap for each individual project. And then in parentheses is the total project cost. So the Abigail Stewart House was the second ranked project, which was repairing the exterior of that house. The YWCA building is additional repairs to that building. And then the fourth ranked project was an archaeological survey of the Bigelow House property. And then the fifth ranked project, Olympia Tumwater Foundation, was purchase of display cases to display artifacts from the Olympia Brewery and the Schmidt family. And the sixth project, as Ashley alluded to, is a proposal to document oral histories about specific pieces of local history in South Sound. And then number 7 was a temporary exhibit in the historic fire hall building in downtown. Some nuance to these, which we'll explore here with the recommendations, but the primary recommendation from the Historic Commission was that the Board of County Commissioners consider funding some or all of the eligible projects, and they gave 2 options. One would be to fully fund the top 4 for a total cost of $40,000, or to fund, and the second option would be to fully fund all 7 for $67,000. In addition to that, maybe I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from the board.
Commissioner Mejia.
How much do we set aside for this?
So when we went out for the request for projects, we said that we would likely have 40,000 available in $10,000 grant award amounts. And whether there is more available would be a question for the budget office that we would, based on the board's direction, have to research further. But the expectation from the community was we set a cap at 40 based on.
It's typically a $5,000 grant.
It's typically
So
5.
we've increased.
We increased it. We actually didn't get a lot of applications in prior years when we were at the $5,000 amount. So this is kind of a different model. Like, if we increase it, do we get more interest? And we did. We got more interest. We have actually a competitive round of funding versus not even utilizing all of the funding available.
That's great.
Yeah, $5,000 doesn't go very far with historic projects, unfortunately, and it's nice to see some of these projects. The 10,000 is, a good proportion of what they need to actually complete it, which helps with the realistic timeline. Our understanding is that this is a fund balance that is going down. It's not being replenished as quickly, so I think being cautious is advisable.
Any further questions on this recommendation at this time? Otherwise, I'll tee up the second one.
I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay, great. And I can essentially punt to Ashley at this point, but there was a proposal to provide funding for repairs at the Heritage Hall, which is part of the Thurston County Fairgrounds. And the Historic Commission had some thoughts that they wanted to share with the board on that.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. The proposal actually came from the Fair Foundation. There are some repairs needed out at Heritage Hall, estimated at about $96,000. We have actually gotten bids for those. The Historic Commission said that it was an eligible project, so it wasn't necessarily a matter of it not being eligible, but they felt like it was deserving of some kind of investment from the county to fund those repairs, and that the Heritage Grant Award would not be enough, that $10,000 toward a $100,000 project was not going to be, or not ensure feasibility long-term. So I wanted to share that with the board, and we're open to discuss with the budget office and the board, maybe other options for funding that.
Yeah, since this, if I may, since this morning is a discussion item, I appreciate Ashley and Andrew bringing forward the different options, and this will allow probably until the end of the week for our budget team to look at this fund. I think that we are aware that in out years, if we spend too much, that this fund could go into the red, and so we want to be careful that we don't position ourselves this year in a way that would that dynamic.
Thank you. Commissioner Mejia.
So the expectation for today, is it just for discussion, or do you want direction to then later be presented in front of the board for an
It'd
AIS?
be great to get direction from you so that we can research and come back and let you know if that there's any issues with the direction given. Obviously, if we go back to the 2 proposals, it's to fund the 40,000. We believe that there's enough funding to do that without any real budget review. But to look at option B, or definitely recommendation 2, those would take a few days of analysis to come back to the board next week with a sense of where that fund will be in the out years, and if the fund has enough capacity to handle those other recommendations.
I'm inclined to say 1A, keep it simple, and then of course look outside for additional funds for the Heritage Hall. Is that?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that, but I would still like to see where we're at with the budget for this specific. And just so we are aware of kind of the situation.
Yeah, we can schedule that out for a couple weeks then to bring that back to you for review.
Okay. Any further thoughts or questions?
So we're going thumbs, is that what we're doing this time
It'd
around?
be great to see some thumbs.
Yes, sir.
I think I heard Ty.
Yep, so, looks like we have a bunch just for one to
Okay.
go. Yes.
Thank you.
Next subject, public hearing follow-up, Grand Mound West UGA expansion, land use and rezone amendment.
Hold on just a second. This is a follow-up to the public hearing that was held, and the board did allow the comment period to stay open, so we'll be covering the comments that were received at the public hearing as well as comments that were relayed to the board since then. The mouse is telling me I'm not using it correctly. Okay. So just for a quick overview, we do have two proposals here that we had a public hearing for. We've got the Womoski one, that is the 29-acre proposal to go from one house per 5 acres to a more urban density in the Grand Mound area that would allow 4 to 16 dwelling units per acre. And then, of course, we also have the Black Lake Quarry proposal, and that would be 67 acres going from that one house per 5 acres to light industrial. And that is one that's currently operated as a mine. So to be clear, and we should have done this at the public hearing, what this project does is expand the UGA, allowing for future infrastructure extensions, and change the land use and zoning, which impacts allowed uses. What the project does not, and this is hard for community members to grasp, it doesn't authorize any specific development. Future use of property would require additional permits, utility extensions, as well as impact fees. And this is important when you start thinking about things like transportation impacts and school impacts. So this project has been going on for quite a while. In terms of a formal process, we really kicked it off in 2022 with Planning Commission review, and this was for the full Grand Mound sub-area plan. It has gone through a lot of public review, as well as review by the Urban Growth Management Subcommittee, environmental review, and then, of course, the Board of County Commissioner review. What we're looking for today, if possible, is kind of a thumbs up on which proposals you want included, because this is a comprehensive plan amendment package that we're putting together, and we need to know what is going to go into that final year decision that you can only make once a year as a board versus ones that you might want to delay until next year. So in terms of the comments that came in, we tried to just encapsulate them at a high level. So this isn't going to be every single comment, but these were themes that were identified. So of course, we heard concerns about traffic impacts. We did want to let you know that there was a traffic impact analysis done for the proposals in their current state, but without a specific use, we're not able to say this is exactly where an entryway is going to be to that property, or these are exactly the improvements that will need to be made. Those would get made at the time of development, and we do have conditions that are part of the environmental review that require those traffic studies to be done at the time of development, in addition to all of the other codes and ordinances that would apply. Traffic impact fees are also something that get collected at the time of development, and that is what goes to help pay for those broad transportation improvements in Grand Mound. Sewer water impacts, we have been engaging with Public Works throughout the entirety of this process to ensure that, you know, all of the facilities would be there and have enough capacity for these changes. And then, of course, every future application would have to demonstrate sewer water availability, pay for the extensions, and pay for whatever other connection costs. Increased taxes, we heard that at the public hearing. Zoning itself doesn't change taxes. Taxes are based on property use and buildings and structures that are built on that property. But it's really hard to say what any of those impacts would be moving into the future. And then in terms of public notice, we've been working with the public on these proposals for nearly 2 years at this point, and have been sending out email updates to a long list of stakeholders. And then, of course, we sent out mail notices to surrounding property owners for those rezones. So we want to break out then, if you look at the two separate proposals, we had comments come in, for one or the other. So those were general public comment themes we just covered, and now we're just going to make it a little bit more specific. So starting with Black Lake Quarry. Oops. There's a slide missing here. Let me see if it's further down. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm going to just review some of the Black Lake Quarry ones. It looks like a slide wasn't included. Apologies for that. What we did hear about the Black Lake Quarry proposal, both at the public hearing and then subsequent comments, is that folks felt it did create more consistent zoning with the activities that are currently happening on that property. That it would prevent mining closer to the water table, especially in an area where groundwater is so close to the surface. And that there would be increased employment opportunities. And then when we get down to Womaski here, we heard more specific concerns about school impacts. If that was developed residentially, hopefully we'd have families living there. Did want to let you know that we do collect school impact fees. Those are set by the school, and they're set at a level that they've informed us will support whatever expansion needs would exist. And so for every single family home, we assess over $6,600 in school impact fees, and for multifamily units, over $4,200. There was also reference to lack of parks. We do collect park impact fees. As you know, there is a broader interest in establishing more parks and open space in Grand Mound and into the future. There were also concerns, and these ones came from the State Department of Commerce, about the urban growth area not being fully developed as needed before looking to expand. And so their concerns are that we're not optimizing use of the land that's already there for multifamily development, and that we should do that before looking to expand. The applicants team provided a very lengthy response to that, and they did sort of a site-by-site analysis, looking at the development trends in Grand Mound. And we have had land there for a long time in zones that would allow multifamily, and they have not been developed. They either have critical areas on them, or they might have a single family home plopped down right in the middle of the site, which makes redevelopment hard. So you have both of those in your packet to look at. There was also concern about it maybe creating a zoning island, and that if we were looking at creating sort of this area of multifamily, why would we just look at expanding it to the west of 201st? And our response to that is we throughout our public review, we haven't heard from surrounding property owners that they would be interested in rezoning, but that is something we could look at through the housing updates if you'd like. And there was also comments submitted that all the regional housing allocation work that we did find that there was a deficit of housing, like workforce housing down there in Grand Mound, which I know you've heard when you're out there in the community. Both the tribe as well as the school district have highlighted that it's hard for their employees to find affordable housing in that community. So this work session is really for you, giving you an opportunity to ask any additional questions, having the space and time to process the comments that were shared. And our hope as staff is to just get a direction on what of these two projects you want to have included in the final action for the end of the year.
Thank you, Ashley. Commissioner Edwards?
You made mention when you first started that all of this kind of started around 22, 23, that we started paying attention to this. But when did the applicants actually start the inquiry process? And I just want the public to know that these things don't happen overnight. And I've heard several of these over quite a few years,
I think Wolmoski's is more than 10 years. Is that correct? At least, if not more than 10 years. And then Black Lake Quarry, I think was placed on the docket in the 2021 timeframe, but it didn't.
So maybe started in 20 or something like that. Okay, thank you.
And a lot of work has been done in those intervening years with the Grand Mountain Sub-Area Plan update, as well as the industrial lands inventory and all the regional housing allocation work.
Thank you. Looking for hands. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments for staff?
Are we gonna do a thumbs up thing here? Is that what we got in mind?
So I have a couple of meetings this week with constituents who made comments on these specific items. And I'm also planning on driving through with a few constituents on some of these. And so if the direction that we're being requested to give is to push these forward or not, I would say before I could give a thumbs up, I would need to get through this week of meetings and conversations about them.
My comment, I appreciate the staff's work. Looked like they did a good job answering a lot of the public comments, and I appreciate that.
Nice, good.
Well, I see Mahia's. Commissioner Mejia.
No, I just wanted to, as more of a timing question and follow on to Commissioner Klaus's.
If this was to go on to a meeting, it would.
The amount of effort and lift that staff have to create and finalize the sort of the omnibus ordinance that takes care of all of the various comprehensive plan changes, when that has to be available for the public to view.
By agenda setting next week would be ideal, just so we can finalize ordinance and resolutions, because they do need to get fully reviewed by our legal counsel before they get brought to the board, and we want to make sure you have a chance to review everything going into that package before December 17th.
Yeah, it would be my recommendation, unless we hear from a majority of the board, to get off the path, that we continue to, that staff continue to work on the final action for December. And there will be time for more discourse or dialogue about this from the commissioners, but I don't.
That's where I'm at. Like, if I was to personally give direction, it would be to continue on the path and allow, and we're well within our, our ability to continue working with constituents and stakeholders and getting more feedback in anticipation of an upcoming meeting. That,
because this is a once-a-year process, and as Rob outlined, the path to get here has been pretty laborious. And again, it's the commissioner's call, but we would want to keep this direction unless majority of the commission at this point were to say to delay or to move one of these projects in a different path.
Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I agree with the vice chair's statement that we need to get going on this, because if we delay it, it's not just like it's delayed for a month, it's delayed for another year. And so that's my problem. But I want to have Commissioner Klaus have the ability to be comfortable on it as well. And it sounds like, Wayne, that we do have time, even if we move forward right now, she'll have time to review this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it looks to me.
Yeah, because it'll come for final action still, and so there's
Okay.
opportunity for.
Well, then I'd like to, I'm the vice chair on this.
Yeah, that sounds good. That'll give me time still this week to talk to constituents. Just know I might come back next week at agenda setting with information or an opinion that I don't have today. But yeah, I definitely don't want staff to stop or slow down. Yeah, I have some conversations this week about it, but that sounds good to me.
Commissioner, if, after your meeting with constituents, if you wanted to either send those to Ashley or meet with the CPED team to round up, we would make ourselves available to do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we have direction. If there's any further comment or question, now's the time. Seeing none. Next item, we have executive session. Now we're going to executive session for RCW 42.30.1101B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause likelihood of an increased price. Subject purchase of land, this will take approximately 15 minutes. Board action may follow. back to the November 18th, 2024 Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. We're coming out of executive session. We have no action to take outside of the executive session. Next item on the agenda is commissioner items. Are there any commissioners who would like to provide comment or testimony for commissioner items?
Are we on again at 2 o'clock?
Yes.
What's up at 2 o'clock?
Commissioners check-ins.
Commissioners checking.
Yeah, so, okay, thanks.
All right, seeing no one raising their hand, we will adjourn the meeting to be back at 2.